Good morning, everybody. Really nice to be back here in my normal place. I've been away for a few days, so I haven't been posting as much on various social media platforms because I've been in Hungary at a fantastic conference, which was about, among other things, fighting cultural Marxism and all of these terrible things that we have in Western nations. Not Hungary, though, because they seem to be on the right track and restoring traditional values, whereas we in the UK, not the people, but the government and certain activists who have got a lot of power in culture and society seem to be hell-bent on destroying our values and destroying our culture and society, which is a terrible thing. But as I've been away, the UK government under the fake Conservatives, under Liz Truss, seems to have completely imploded. She's fired her Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, her first Chancellor, and has put in Jeremy Hunt, and also seems to have installed Penny Mordaunt as well. And those two seem to be making up a team as the active PM while she sits in the background blinking and looking broken. And, you know, it's sad because she's almost pitiable as a character because, you know, she just seems to be completely out of her depth and out of control. So there we have the state of play in the parliament. Two of the worst globalists you can imagine. You might as well have Tony Blair or Klaus Schwab in charge of the UK. Now we got Jeremy Hunt and Penny Mordaunt, WEF acolytes. So in a way, however, although this is quite frightening, to people watching what's going on, thinking, well, we don't have democracy because Liz Truss can't do what she wants. Well, she's part of the system as well. Let's remember, this government has been in power for 12 years. I mean, not talking just Liz Truss being Prime Minister, but the fake Conservative Party. You've had Cameron, you've had May, Johnson, now Truss, for a little bit, now Hunt and Mordaunt, but they're all doing the same thing. So the thing is, if you watch the media cycle, if you watch social media, you very, very much get channeled into what's happening right now in this 24-hour media cycle. And you don't think about the context of everything that's happened to lead up to the point that we're in and why we're in the mess that we're in and why the fake Conservative Party is in a mess because it's created the mess in the nation. And they've done things which are more destructive to our country than Tony Blair could even get away with. Look, when Tony Blair was in power, he ruined the Constitution, effectively, you know, with setting up Holyrood and the Senedd in Wales and getting rid of all kinds of things in Parliament and changing things, setting up a Supreme Court, which then rules, you know, in ways that were inconceivable before, and so on. But he tried actually to do two things which were incredibly anti-freedom and destructive, but he couldn't get them through because even his own MPs in the Labour Party back in the last decade or the decade before last, the 2000s, weren't willing to rubber stamp them. Tony Blair tried to bring in identity passes for everybody. So we'd have to carry an identity pass around us, you know, with us, even if we're on the beach or even if we're walking in the countryside or just going to the shops. Some policeman could ask anybody for their identity card and you'd have to show it. And if you couldn't show it, that would be a criminal offence. He tried to bring that in 2006. Even his own party didn't want that. He also tried to bring in registration for homeschooling, and even enough of his own MPs in the Labour Party back in the 2000s voted against that. These are things that the Tory party are now trying to bring in. And they talk about freedom and democracy, but they are trying to destroy freedom and democracy. Well, freedom with the lockdowns that we've had over the last 2 years, which were devastating, and then they pretend that they support freedom. They are anti-freedom in a way that no other administration or party has been since the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Really, they are anti-freedom. Jeremy Hunt, who's now the part of the Prime Minister, the acting Prime Minister team, likes the Chinese Communist Party. He would have locked down the country harder, faster and longer, and it would have probably brought in digital identity and social credit by now if he'd had his way. Penny Mordaunt she's for the online safety bill, which the fake Conservatives want to try to bring in to criminalise speech on the internet and to force internet companies, to remove speech which is deemed legal but harmful. And who decides what's legal but harmful? It could be anything, unless you share a picture of a cat or something. This video itself would probably be deemed legal but harmful and then removed from the internet. Anybody who's declared to be spreading misinformation or disinformation, these two Bolshevik kind of terms which are coming into our modern parlance, which is very, very disturbing, to try to shut people down. So this is the fake Conservative Party. Not only that, over the last few years at least, they have pursued 3 policies which have been completely destructive on a macro level to our economy. Number 1 is net zero, number 2 is the lockdowns, and number 3 is warmongering in Ukraine. And nobody else is going to say that. They're not going to admit that themselves. And whether it's Liz Truss or whether it is the replacement Prime Minister team of Hunt and Mordaunt, they're all for all 3 things still. I mean, they're paying lip service to allowing people to use their cars for a little bit longer. But in the end of the day, they're all signed up to the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Some of them wear the little rings with the 17 colours on their lapel pins. You know who they are. They go to the conferences in Davos. They go to the climate change conferences. And they want people to be forced to get rid of their cars and live in smart blocks in smart cities with smart meters and smartphones and smart 5G, so everyone can be monitored every single minute of the day with everything they do, and their energy use can be controlled, and everyone's spending and finance in their accounts, their new central bank digital currency accounts, which they want to bring in, can be controlled so that you could only spend your money on what the government says you can spend your money on. This is what they will want to happen eventually and ultimately. So the whole net zero thing, they're part of it, but that is what's caused massive inflation in gas prices, energy prices, electricity prices, because they have demolished and dynamited parts of our energy infrastructure. They've actually, as I've said before, literally blown up many of our coal power stations and shut them down so they can't be used. But then there's not enough energy production going on from wind and solar because they don't produce energy when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. And that is the fault of the fake Conservative Party. Johnson, Truss, May, Cameron, Hunt, Mordaunt, everyone who's been in the government over the last 12 years all supported this. So, they are responsible for one of the biggest things that has caused the economic calamity that we're in right now. And no mini budget from Kwasi Kwarteng is going to undo the damage that they've done over 12 years. But that's all now been reversed by Jeremy Hunt anyway. More of that later. The other thing, of course, is the lockdowns. I mentioned that before, how that destroyed small and medium-sized businesses. And then, of course, the money they spent on it, increasing the national debt by 25%, is automatically going to feed into inflation. So prices are automatically going to go up 25%. That's baked into the system because they piled another £500 million onto the national debt. But nobody seems to want to talk about that. They're all now, we have to be fiscally responsible now. But they're the ones who are so disastrously fiscally irresponsible over the last 2 years. They're not taking any iota of responsibility for what they have done. So this is just complete brazen gaslighting, talking about how they need to be responsible now when they were so grossly irresponsible in 2020, 2021. During the lockdown and furlough period, and throwing people out of their jobs and saying you can't work, but then they're going to pay people not to work. This is a Bolshevik communist kind of economics that leads to everything just collapsing and the economy crashing. This is what this fake Conservative Party has done. And the other thing, of course, more recently, just this year, is provoking and promoting and prolonging the war, the conflict in Ukraine, or the special military operation, whatever you like to call it. Totally unnecessary. This is a conflict that never needed to have happened. It's only happened because Western countries, Western leaders have been poking the bear when they didn't need to. I mean, what's happening in the Donbass is nothing to do with what's happening in the UK. But it is now because they carried on provoking. And for 8 years, this government, among other governments, have supported National Socialists in Ukraine who were killing Russians in the Donbass area. And now they're stoking up tensions, escalating and escalating and escalating when we should be de-escalating and trying to end this conflict. And of course, the sanctions they put on Russia means that we can't buy Russian gas and oil because they've said, we can't buy it. That's the sanctions. They're basically shooting ourselves in the foot. And the Nord Stream pipelines, of course, we know, were blown up underwater, most probably by the United States. Nobody actually knows for sure, but that's all the evidence and you look at the motivation seems to point to the US deep state being involved in blowing that up. But even though they did, what, again, no one is really telling you on the mainstream media is the 4 pipelines, basically. Nord Stream 1 had 2 pipelines, Nord Stream 2 had another. One of those pipelines in Nord Stream 2 is still operational. So only 3 of the 4 pipelines were actually destroyed. One of them still works. So if there was the political will, gas could start flowing today between Russia and Germany, only a quarter of the capacity of what they would have had. But you could get 27.5 BTCs of gas flowing every day through that pipeline to Germany, which would help to alleviate the problems of energy supply in Europe and then lower gas prices. And then we wouldn't have this crazy situation where households are going to be in trouble, businesses are going to be in trouble because they can't get enough energy. One of them works. Open that half of Nord Stream 2 that's still functional, that hasn't been destroyed, that's still intact. Let's have it, and let's end this conflict and get back to a situation where we can all work together. One of the biggest tragedies of foreign relations over the last 100 years or more is that America, Britain, Germany, Russia, we're all Christian nations. We should all be friends together. We should all be partners together and working together. But somehow, some forces have continually stirred up enmity and animosity between our nations. I mean, obviously, Britain and America are friends, but, Britain and Germany were enemies, that Germany and Russia were enemies, and now Britain and Germany are enemies with Russia. And, it's just crazy. This enmity that's stirred up between these powerful northern countries should not be happening. And that's one of the biggest tragedies and things that I think is wrong in our foreign affairs. But I've actually heard, this is from UK Column. I think they're very good at analysing this. And the point of NATO, they say, during the Cold War, you could see a point to NATO. And there still is a point, if it's only purely defensive. But it seems that some people, that the point of this NATO alliance is to keep America in, Germany down, and Russia out. This is a very, very astute way of looking at it. But we shouldn't have a policy where we're trying to alienate Russia. But that seems to be what's happening at the moment. But, I would do something different. I would try to heal the tensions and heal the poison that's been put into these relationships, and then get us all back working together, at least. If we can't even be friends, that's what we should be. But because this government is now stoking up tensions with Russia, that's causing global economic calamity, of course, which is affecting ordinary people and ordinary businesses in a way that shouldn't be affected them, and is completely unnecessary. And they're not putting the interests of British families and British businesses first by pursuing somebody else's political agendas in foreign affairs. That's what's happening, and that's what's wrong. Let's look at what's happened briefly in the budget, the mini budget by Kwarteng, and then how it was overturned by Jeremy Hunt. Now, I have to say that the end result of what's happened is not disastrous for people. So, what's happened is there was the energy price guarantee, which is because energy bills were going to go up to £6,000 a year, which would have just wiped out loads of households, of course. The energy price guarantee was going to be for 2 years, sort of making sure the government paid the excess energy over an average of £2,500, which is still a huge amount for a household to pay on their energy bills. But what that's done is it's averted this mass far left threat of civil disobedience and chaos through this Don't Pay UK movement, which was going to sort of kick off on October the 1st. It's taken all of the energy out of that. So, for October, we could have been, if they hadn't have done this, there would have been poll tax kind of riots, poll tax style riots on the street by the far left, organising and agitating. That was a real threat that would have caused chaos, social chaos across the country. So that's taken that away. Actually, that was quite an astute political move to do that. She had to do that, to be honest, but to guarantee that price for 2 years, and then Jeremy Hunt's rode that back to 6 months. I mean, to me, to be honest with you, I'm no fan of Jeremy Hunt, but that actually does seem like a fairly sensible move, because you don't know what the energy price is going to be in 6 months' time. They could have come down, who knows? Everyone might be sensible and the energy prices could have come down. So to put the guarantee in for 2 years seems a bit of a long time, because that does put the government on the hook and the taxpayer on the hook for billions, tens of billions of pounds for 2 years, which is really, not a very sensible thing to do. Do it for 6 months, then reassess and see if you need what you need to do the next 6 months, and keep on reassessing every 6 months, rather than guarantee for such a long amount of time, which could then put the taxpayers on the hook for another £100 billion of debt and so on. So actually, that does seem, a rather astute move there. What Jeremy Hunt has kept, which Kwasi Kwarteng originally said, is that the national insurance rise of 1.25% isn't going to go ahead. That's a very good thing, because that's would be pretty bad for individual people to increase national insurance by 1.25%. So I'm very glad that that's not going ahead. Cancelling the income tax reduction from 20 to 19%. Again, that doesn't really make much difference. So, basically for ordinary people, for everybody, tax and national insurance are just going to stay the same as they are now. Okay, so I was in favour of reducing the top rate of tax from 45 to 40p. That's not going to happen now because of Jeremy Hunt. Doesn't affect most people. I think it's a good thing to reduce it because in the end of the day, in the long term, you'll get more money in because more people will be incentivized to work harder. If they have a lower tax rate, they'll work harder, their wages will increase, and then they will pay more tax in the end because of the Laffer curve. But there we go. It's not going to do that, but that doesn't affect too many people. But it will affect growth in the long term. The worst thing is the corporation tax rise that Jeremy Hunt has now said he's going to do, increasing corporation tax from a whopping 6%. From 19p to 25p in the pound. That is really, really bad for businesses. That is a really bad move and a bad policy because you're going to get less tax in the long run because businesses will just say, some businesses won't be able to cope with that. If you increased it by 1% to 20 pence, which is what I said, that will get you a little bit more money, but it's not going to harm businesses. But by increasing it all the way to 25p in the pounds, that's really going to hurt a lot of businesses who are on very thin margins. And some businesses are going to go out of business because of Jeremy Hunt and because of his increase in corporation tax, particularly small businesses that are already struggling, particularly people in the hospitality trade and so on. They need to keep as much as they can. It's not going to hurt big businesses too much because a lot of the big businesses, they have structures where they have a UK subsidiary of a shell corporation in the Virgin Islands, which is owned by some other company in Singapore, which is owned by some other company in America. So, it's not going to affect them. It's going to affect small and medium-sized businesses. And this now looks like a budget that is going to crush small and medium-sized businesses again, particularly when you put that along with the reversal of the changes to the IR35 regulations, which is something that you don't really know about unless you're a small, independent person, a sole trader. You can't, you have to pay more as a sole trader because of the current IR35 regulations. Truss and Quarteng are going to get rid of all those regulations to make it easier to people to set up as sole traders and small businessmen and keep more of their profits and earnings. Hunt has gone back on that and is now making life harder for sole traders and small businesses, which is really bad. So this is a budget, what he's done for big business. It's going to hurt small and medium-sized businesses, which just goes on the back of what's happened over lockdown for the last 2 years, which hurt small and medium-sized businesses and sole traders immensely. This is a government of globalists. It's a government of the World Economic Forum. It's not a government that supports small business, and it's anti-conservative in that respect. It's fake conservative. We need a change for the economy and also for our culture and our society. So as I always say, Heritage Party here, we are the party which can change all that, and will change all that if you just give us a chance. We want to stand people everywhere in all 650 seats in the next general election. A lot of people have been joining us over the last week or two as the fake conservatives have imploded. So thank you to all our new members for joining, and all our new coordinators who are getting things going around the country in various places. If you haven't joined us already, please do join. £25 for the year, it's not much, to join a political party. You can join us on heritageparty.org. Please join, just support us. just joining supports us, but if you want to get more involved as well, be a candidate, be a coordinator, be an activist, or just come to the meetings and meet other people, you're welcome to join. heritageparty.org. Please also do give me a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to my channel, because that helps me as well. Okay, thank you so much. If you got to the end of this, if you're listening to the end, well done. These are scary times, but we're here to set things back on the right course and restore our nation, and we can do it together. Okay, thank you everyone. God bless you all.